How's it going? I hope your day is going well. And in this project, what we're going to do is focus on another HTML and CSS project that you can practice on without the complexity of JavaScript. And so what we're going to build in this one is a team member card that's going to pretty much have a team member image, their name, a little brief about them, and some social buttons at the bottom. Now, with that being said, let's jump right into the project. So here we are in the project, and first thing you might see is the index.html file. Now, this little project template, can be found in the description below. So, and once you download the template, you should also have the assets folder with a bunch of images. So that will include our social buttons, the member image that we have here. It's going to have your style already preset with our variables. It's going to have our body already pre-configured for us. And it's also going to have a style guide here, which again, is going to just go over the variables that for our branding. It's going to show our font, but if you already download this project, it should already have the font already preset within our HTML file. So the style guide is just like a little overview of the font that we're going to use, the different weights that we're going to have, and also it's going to include the font sizes. So now, with all that being said, let's go right back to our index file and get started. Now, as you can see right here, here's a comment that says add your changes here. What we're going to do is go right to that and start adding our changes. But before that, let's actually navigate back to our mockup just to give a little overview of what we're actually going to build. So here we are. Here we have our team member card with the team member image right here as the first element of our card. It's going to have their name, a possible brief of them, and it's going to have the social buttons at the bottom. Okay, now with that being said, now let's head back to our index.html file. So the first thing we typically are going to want to do is just add a section that's going to include our, let's see, here we go, a section that's going to include our team member information. The first thing I like to do when I add my tags is to go ahead and just start adding my classes right away. So here, what we're going to do is just call it team dash member for our section. And then the next thing we're going to want to add is, let's see, we're going to want to add that is our image, our team member image. So for that, we're going to add the image tag, and from there we're going to start to have VS Code, which I'm using here, to start to autofill out the source of our image tag. And then you typically, well, at least it's best practice to add the alt tag, or the alt information for your image tag. But since this is just an example, we're going to just call it team member. Again, that should be a little bit more descriptive than just team member, since you're going to have screen readers using the alt tag to actually describe the image to members who actually need that information. Now let's go over here and let's add our class for this. And since the image is going to be a sub member of our section, let's just go ahead and add team member as the prefix, and let's do __ to give a separation of what this particular thing is. Okay, now that we have that, let's move on, and let's just close this to give us a little bit more space to work with. Let's just add our team member name. So same thing here. We're going to just grab the class from our image and just simply change out the in part to let's call it name. Yeah, so it'd be team member name. Yeah, that's good. Okay, so we have the team member name. And let's add the, it's the same thing here. Let's just add our brief with the paragraph tag also. Now, typically I would like to I always like to use them like different tags for our, so like a H3, H2, H1, you know, those type of tags to give it a little bit more semantic meaning of what we're actually adding to our page. But for this one, you know, it's not really needed here. So we're going to just keep it a little more simple. Yep. So we're going to just do that. Same thing with the same thing was, we're going to follow the same naming convention that we done with the team member name. We're going to just call it brief for that. And after that, now we're going to want to, now from here, we're going to, so we have the name, the brief. From here, we're going to need to add the social information. Now, we could just add all of that information, you know, directly below our brief here. But what I like to do is just kind of just add another section to have that information kind of sectioned off, as you will. And from there, let's just go ahead and same thing, add a class to that. So, okay, let's, not that. So let's grab this, and there we go. And so what we're going to do is just call it social. And then for each of the social, so each one of their social links, we'll just add it as like maybe social, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, as we get down to that. But before we get there, let's go back actually to our mock-up and see what's next. Okay, so we're going to have to add like a little title right there. And so for this, let's actually add this as a span instead of adding it as a paragraph, since this will be actually inline. Okay, it's called follow at, there we go. And then from there, since the buttons are, you can treat those buttons as like their own separate section also. That's probably what we're gonna want to do again for those buttons. Those social links. So for this, we're gonna just go ahead and copy that again and add this as maybe, let's see, team member social. Oops, that's not how you spell social. There we go. Fix that. Now let's come back down here and let's see. Let's go back to our design really quick. So we have 3 different buttons. And so, yeah, now we can define these as buttons, but since we don't actually need a title for our actual social buttons, what we're going to do is just directly define these as links or anchor tags, or use the anchor tag to do that. Okay, for that, we'll just add the home page for each of these links. So we'll just go like linkedin.com, Facebook, or facebook.com, twitter.com, or x.com. Okay, now that we have that, let's actually define our images as, yes, define our images, and then from here we just call it LinkedIn. And then from there, let's actually grab the social links. Okay, and then from there, we actually could just copy and paste the rest of it. So from here, this will be, the next one will be Twitter, or we could just do x.com. Okay, so we have x.com. Let's just update this to Twitter, and then we can also just update the alt. Come back over here. Let's just do Facebook. Same thing with the image. Call it Facebook, and also update the alt. Okay, let's see. So we have. Okay, yeah, we're gonna have to actually update this also. Let's call this links, since that section is gonna house the social links. Okay, we also gonna need a class to target the social title. Okay, we have that. Let's update this to social title. There we go. And then we actually gonna need our team member name. So I'll just have that off to the side. Let's just copy that, and then let's actually add the brief text. Have that off to the side also. There we go. Okay, remove that space there, and let's see. So let's do a quick review. So we have the team member section, we have the team member image, team member name, the brief, then we have the team member social section. Then within that section, we're gonna have the team member social title, which is gonna be the follow at, and we're gonna have under that, we're gonna have another section defined as the team member social links. And then from there, we just define each link, the LinkedIn link, Twitter link, and the Facebook link with the correct images set. There we go. Okay, it looks pretty good. Now, that's pretty much, we should pretty much have a good structure in place. And to just quickly validate that, let's actually open the live preview plugin. Let's see. So if you do have VS Code installed, plus the live preview extension, you should, once you go to your index file and then you head over here to this button right here, if you click it, it should open up there we go. Oh, so yeah, we actually do have broken links down here for social buttons. And so that's because we actually added a slash right here in the beginning. There we go. That should fix that. Now that we have that, it looks pretty good. Now that we have the structure in place, now we can head to our CSS file. So we're gonna just go back to the side, reopen up that. For now, let's just close the preview of our index file and head over to our style.css. Okay. Now what we're gonna have to do here is actually, let's just open up our style off to the side so we can just move over all of our different classes that we defined in our index file. Okay, let's just do that. Okay, so we have that. So we could just simply copy and paste. So we just go down the line and copy everything we have. Okay, now that we have all of our classes defined within our style CSS file, let's actually start adding our definitions for our classes. Okay, so let's save that. Let's save our index file also. Let's go back to our mockup really quick just to see what we're working with. Okay, first thing first that I like to do is just simply add a background color. So we actually can just see the content. So let's go here. Let's add the cloud whisper. For that, we're going to use the var, which, as you can see over here, it evaluates the value of a custom variable. Again, the custom variables that we define in our root. So let's go with that. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now, if we go back to our mockup, we actually should see that there's a slight bit of padding between the inner content of our team member and the rest of the content. So let's just do that really quick. So for that, instead of, you have two different ways to add spacing around your elements. And so you have the margin and the padding. And for here, we're actually going to use padding, since the padding is the inner space of your element instead of the outside space. And so if we just quickly go back here and do open up our preview. Okay, there we go. We just have our background defined, and as you can see, we have a little bit of padding around. Looks good. Let's go back and close up our site. So I think we pretty much have everything we need within our tab. Okay, now let's go and I just set the width of this to 300 pixels for now. Now we're actually not going to see that constraint for the most part because we are zoomed in a lot when it comes to this VS Code. So for now, you're not actually going to see that. For us to really see our element in full effect, at the end of this video, we're going to open up our example within maybe a Chrome or Safari or something like that to actually see it in a real browser and see how it looks there. But for now, we're going to just continue to add all of our CSS, and then we'll view that at a later time. Okay, so we have that. Let's see. For our image, let's just actually explicitly set the width, but instead of setting it with a percentage, or we are going to set it as a percentage, but instead of setting it with a explicit pixel information like we did here in the team member, we're going to just set it to 100 so that the image will constrain itself to the parent being the team member, which in turn is set to a 300 pixels. Okay. Okay, so let's move down to the name. Now the name already comes with, since the name is set as a paragraph, the paragraph already comes with pre-existing information. And so what we're going to want to do is kind of just override that. And like I was mentioning about before, difference between the margin and the padding, the paragraph already comes pre-configured with margin instead of padding. And so what we're going to want to do here is actually just change that margin to 12 pixels. 12 pixels for the up and down, or the top and bottom of your element. And then that's if you define your margin with these two numbers here. Now you could define it with 4 numbers, or just one number, or just one value, not number, but value. If you set it with one value, it's going to set all of your margins, so your top, bottom, left, and right, to be the same thing. But for this example, we do not want it to be the same, so that's why we defined it like this. We want to have the top and bottom to be the same, and there we go. As you can see, a little bit of space that we had between our title, or not the title, but our team member name and their actual image has actually shrunk a little bit. Okay, that looks pretty good. So from there, since we did the padding, or the margin between our name, let's head back to our style guide. And for now, let's just open up our style guide as another tab over here. And then we can actually close this back again. What we're going to see here is that we're going to need to set the font, or we actually don't need to set the font because the font family is already set within our body. So all of our font that's going to be defined within our HTML page will already have will have a consistent font family set. So we don't need to explicitly set the font family for the name. So we don't have to do that. But what else do we need to set? We're going to need to set the font size to a explicit 24 pixels. We're going to need to do that. And we're also going to need to explicitly set the weight, which will be 600. Okay, so let's go back to our name and add that information. Okay. So let's add the font size as font size 24 pixels, and then we can set the weight of, I believe it was 600. So we can actually navigate back and see. Yeah, it was a semi-bold, which is 600. Okay, good. Let's see. Then the last thing we're going to want to do is actually change the color of our name, because we actually have like this. We set the color for the entire body to be our like dark gray color, but if you navigate back to our navigate back to our mockup, we should see that it actually is a darker color, which means that it's going to be our nighttime sky brand color right here. So let's just navigate back down to explicitly set the color for our name. And again, as we did earlier, let's set the nighttime sky as our color. Now to actually see the change, we're going to have to navigate back to our index file and save it there. And there we go. It should update from there. Okay, looks pretty good. Okay, now that we have that, let's move down to our brief as the next element that we need to change. Okay, now from here, we do not need to change the actual color, because if you navigate back to our mockup, it already has that grayish color, so we don't need to change the color of that. However, we will need to address the padding between our name and brief. Now, like I said earlier, the paragraph tag already has pre-existing styling added to it, and so and specifically the paragraph has margin set already, and so for that we actually are not going to want the inherited margin. So for that, we're going to just set that to 0. Let's navigate back to our index file, and there we go. It moves it up a little bit. Navigate back to our markup. You can see that, yes, there we go. The padding between the name and the brief looks closer to what our mockup is. Okay, that looks good. However, by removing all of our margin, we actually remove the margin at the bottom of our brief also. So what I like to do is just to clear out the margin, as we did like here. We just set it as a 0 pixel, and then come back and explicitly set the bottom to something that we want. So for now, let's just set it to 8 pixels and head back to our index file and see how that looks. Okay, yeah, that looks pretty good. Put a nice little space between the brief and the follow, or no, our social section. So there we go. That looks pretty good. Yep, looks pretty good. Now the last thing we're going to need to do is actually address the weight of our brief. Okay. Now, define the actual weight, we could just navigate right back to our style guide and see. So we need the extra light, and extra light is set as 200, well, the weight of 200. So we just need to navigate, and we also need to make sure that our font size for our body or the brief is set to 16 pixels. So before we check the font size, let's just set the weight, the font weight as 200. And let's see, I believe the body, yeah, so the body already sets the font size as 16. So that means that we do not need to also we do not need to explicitly set the font size here for our brief, since it's already defined in the body, and everything on your page will inherit it from the body. So there we go. Okay, let's save that and navigate back to our index. Save that, and there we go. It's a little bit thinner, and it does, okay, yeah, it matches our design file closer. Now that we have our team member image, title, or name for that matter, and their brief, let's now focus our attention towards the follow or the social section. Okay. So now what we're going to want to do is actually render. So right now our content is being rendered right in a straight line, but we're going to want our social buttons to render to the right of our follow at title. And so for that, now we can, there's a lot of different ways to do this, but what I'm going to do is just use display flex to handle actually moving that content in the right location. There we go. And next thing I'm going to want to do is that actually pull down our follow at to make sure that it's actually centered in between, or centered, not in between, because in between will be over here somewhere, but centered like right here to our social link buttons. Okay, and in order to do that, let's go back to our style.css, and let's actually add this property here called the align items. So if you can see the brief of what this property does, it says align flex items along the cross axis of the current line. Again, current line of, since we only set the display flex and display flex and did not define how we want the column to kind of get rendered, it will always default to render it as a row. And so in the cross axis of the row will be the horizontal. So that's exactly what we want. So let's do centered for that. Come back to our index, save that, and there we go. Now it actually pulled it down a little bit too much. But for now, it's going to look like that until we actually view this within a normal browser. For now, we can just leave it there. Okay, now that we have that, let's actually add a little bit of spacing between our title and the actual buttons, our button section. To do that, let's just add a gap here, and let's put 5 pixels. Yeah, let's try 5 pixels. Navigate back to our index HTML. Okay, yeah, so it added a little bit of space, but let's always cross check that with your design file. And so it seems like we need a little bit more spacing there. So let's head back in. Let's double that to 10 pixels and see how that looks. Okay, 10 pixels. Save that, and then let's navigate back to our index, save that, and it puts a little bit more spacing there. Again, it doesn't look like it's a direct representation of our mockup file, but again, let's just leave it as is for now, and then we'll review it later. Okay, now that we have that, let's actually come back to let's move down to our follow at title and see what we need to add for that. Let's see. Let's go to our style guide and see if we need to add anything here there. Okay, so 16 pixels is already defined within our body. So, within the body, so we don't need to do that. The font family is also set, and I believe the regular font weight is also set within our body. So let's just do a quick look and see. So what was that? That was the font weight of 400. So let's go back to our body and see if that's there. Okay, yep, there we go. Font weight of 400. So for the social title, we actually do not need to add anything for that. So we could actually remove that, but for now we're gonna just leave it in case you want to add any more, like play around with it and change the colors or change something else later on. Now with that, let's navigate down to our buttons over here. And so for this, the buttons are already in a row, so we don't necessarily need to change anything there. However, what we're gonna want to do is still define this as display flex, so we can. Yeah, so we're still gonna want to define this as display flex, so we can get access to the gap property. And from there, let's just set the gap to 8 pixels and see how that looks. Okay, there we go. Adds a little bit more space. Yeah, okay. The spacing looks pretty good from there. Okay, that looks pretty good as is. Now let's zoom out and see how well our design actually starts to match. Okay, so yeah, as you can see, once we start to zoom out, our follow at starts to move up. Yeah, it's starting to actually move up there, which looks better. Let's see. Looks good there. Review of this within a normal browser. Okay, there you go. If you actually review this right here, you can see that when this actually is rendered in a normal web browser like Chrome, Chromium, Firefox, anything like that, you will see that the actual example looks pretty good, and it actually seems to match our design even more close. And so, yeah, like I was saying earlier, the VS Code is great, for quick prototyping, but you're always going to want to test your final design on a normal web browser just to get a good sense of how it will actually render when it's actually viewed in a real environment. So there you go. Here's another quick project that you can actually use as a practice project to learn a little bit more of HTML and CSS without trying to get into JavaScript just right now, at least. Now, if this video was helpful in any way, remember to go into the comment section and let me know, or if this video was not helpful, also go into the comment section and let me know. So now with that being said, I hope you have a nice day and see you into the next video.